Welcome, my name is Tossie. Welcome to Be in the Garden. Be in nature. I trust you're well. I certainly am. What do I have here? I have in my hand a pumpkin. So pumpkins come in all manner of sizes and colours and textures and tastes. But this is a pumpkin that I actually purchased from a store. You often find these pumpkins because they're so large that they come ready sliced. And when I buy them for the family, we always buy ones that have the seeds. Pumpkin seeds make a delicious meal. But the reason why I buy the pumpkins with the seeds is really just to sort of demonstrate that this pumpkin was a good pumpkin and it's very viable. But I also like to gather the seeds and harvest the seeds, save the seeds and sow the seeds. So when I buy the pumpkin, I just check and make sure that the piece I'm selecting has got lots of seeds. And I'm just going to show you what I do in terms of gathering them. Good old-fashioned kitchen utensil, aka your hand, and I simply pop the seeds into a container. I can't remember how much this piece of melon, I can't remember the cost of this pumpkin was, but let's just say for argument's sake it was £5. Look at how many seeds you get. And if you know the cost of seeds, then really you've gotten yourself a bargain if it is your intention to use these either to roast and eat them or to sow them on. I'm going to show you what I do to preserve the seeds. Remove the seeds. Those are the seeds. That's the pumpkin. We have here a good number of seeds that came from this piece of pumpkin, a good number of seeds. So what I do next is I try to separate that sort of inner, softer pith area, and that can go into the compost. So I continue removing the seeds from that sort of inner fleshy area as much as possible. And then you're left with just the seeds alone. And you can do with them what you like. You can rinse them and roast them. There are so many people who like to roast the seeds. You can let them dry out. But what I do next is they're actually quite sort of slimy and slippery. And so I just rinse them in a sieve. I pop them into the sieve in the kitchen and I just rinse them just to remove the outer sort of slimy bit. But then once they've been rinsed, I then top the seeds up with water. So initially, in the kitchen, rinse them out. You can do this under running water if you like. In a sieve, I'll pop these into the sieve, and in running water, under running water, I will just wash off as much of the outer coating as possible and drain that off. So I'm draining it through the table. You get my drift. And once you've done that a few times, the seeds will continue to be very slimy. What I then do is top it up with water. Just rinsing my hands as I do. And I let them sit in water. I let these sit in water for up to 1 week. what happens is the outer coating will disintegrate, for want of a better word. The outer coating, that slimy outer coating, will slowly diminish into the water. You can rinse them every day if you like, but they need to sit in water for up to 5 days. I normally leave them in the same water for up to 5 days. It just depends, but there'll come a point when you'll see that the non-viable seeds will float to the top and the heavy, strong seeds will sink to the bottom. I'll say that again. The seeds that are non-viable or less likely to germinate will float to the top, and the ones that are very heavy, likely to germinate, will sink to the bottom. Not only that, but the outer coating will also be removed. So where here you can see the outer coating, that will all be removed from the seed. Once that's happened, I rinse it a few times. I remove and discard the higher level, so I remove and discard the floating seeds, and that will include seeds that accidentally got cut during the process, and I'll put those ones in the compost. But the lower seeds I'll rinse again, and then what I do, so you have to imagine that these have been rinsed and rinsed and rinsed. What I then do is the ones that have been rinsed and rinsed and rinsed, I then lay them on some paper tissue. It's just that simple. You can put some newspaper if you like. So you have to imagine that these have been in the water for about 3, 4, 5 days. These are the ones that sunk. Rinse them out and I place them on tissue, and I leave them not in direct sunlight, but just somewhere where there's good aeration, and then they can dry out. And once they're dry, I write down on the tissue what they are and when I did the process. And once they're dry, I simply roll them up and place them in a glass jar where, when I need to, I have access to them and I can sew them out. I can also sew them onto the tissue if I choose, especially if I've sewed them out if I've dried them out very sparsely. Then I can just simply tear or cut the tissue and plant these out as they are, because the tissue is biodegradable, and I can just sew that directly into the soil and they will germinate through the tissue. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to pop these back in here because I haven't quite finished the process yet. But as they say in television, I'm going to show you some I did earlier. Here are some I did earlier, as in last year. So here are some seeds, and this is what they look like. I've actually got in there some papaya seeds here. The dark ones are the papaya seeds, but you can see here where these have dried up completely and are now ready to be sowed. Dried seeds ready to be sowed, or do with them what you like, compared to the ones that still contain the moisture. You can see the difference. Thank you so much for watching. Another thing I can do with the seeds, just using an upcycled plastic bottle, leaving the lid on, I pop some soil inside of the bottle. So you have to use your imagination here. Pop some soil, some compost in the bottle until it's about half full. Remembering that when something is half full, it cannot be half empty. It's half full. Then I use this as a miniature greenhouse. I simply pop some seeds into the container, and this is what I do. This is very random, but it does work. I put seeds into the container, and then I put a few handfuls more of soil over them. Seeds, and berries. Put some more soil, some seeds. More is not good. So the seeds themselves are not showing through, they're covered by soil. And then I give it a little watering, and only a little bit of watering, because in this one I actually don't give it any drainage holes, so I need to be on top of it. Alternatively, you can give it a few punch holes at the base, or maybe slightly further up, so that water will stay here and it will only start draining out from slightly above the drainage line, so that the seeds themselves can germinate. The reason I use a plastic bottle, since we have them everywhere, we can upcycle these, but also because I can then stick this on my windowsill and create a mini greenhouse. That helps to speed the germination of the seed. I've got one I did earlier I'm going to show you. So here it is. This is one I did after I dried out the seeds and popped them into the container. And this is them. I've got some seeds in the bottle has acted as a mini glass house for them and kept them nice and warm. And as you can see, they have germinated. Now to open, just see what happens here. I've got some seeds that have germinated. I'm just going to untangle them gently. And there we have it. Isn't that beautiful? From pumpkin to saving seeds, collecting and drying them, and sewing them on. I'm just going to gently tease this one out. There we have it. This one has germinated nicely. There's mud on there, there's soil on there, it will do it no harm. Got some lovely roots on that, and it's just been a few days. So I'm going to pot this on, and what you have when you have germination is that you have two leaves, often not distinct in shape, but then thereafter you have a more distinct shape that takes on the unique pattern of the plant itself. So here we go, just by putting some seeds into a bottle with some soil, acting as a greenhouse to keep it warm. I've got a good root system here, and that can now be potted on to make a brand new plant. So I hope there was something for us all to learn from that exercise, and it's really to let us know that seeds hold so much power. In many ways they are the future. A single seed can feed a generation, because one seed created many pumpkins, and just a portion of that pumpkin gave me many seeds. Thank you for your comments. So you can see here that seeds really are a sign of abundance, because the pumpkin I purchased was only a portion of a pumpkin, yet it had many, many seeds, and each of those seeds can grow new pumpkins. And if we save and resow our seeds, we can feed people for generations to come. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment, maybe some of the recipes that you would do